and it is a public enterprise established by Act of Parliament.
Very well put. Now, can you quickly run us through on what the mandate of Namfisa is?
The mandate of Namfisa in terms of statute centers around supervision, where we supervise anything that is not bank, any financial institution that is not recognized as bank, and their business thereof. And also, we need to advise the Minister of Finance in terms of the business of the non-bank financial sector, as well as the financial institution in that area. As I have said before, also we deal with issues relating to anti-money laundering, combating of financing of terrorism, combating of proliferation financing. So that are the issues that we deal with on a daily basis as the authority.
It's good to know. It's good to know. Mr. Matomola, maybe if you can just enlighten the Namibian nation or on what the vision of Namfisa is kindly.
The vision of Namfisa is premised on what we need to do at the authority. And for that, we have crafted a mission, a vision which says to have a safe, stable, and fair financial system that contributes to the economic development of Namibia, in which customers are protected. So in essence, we want to make sure that the financial system is stable, fair. Anybody can participate in the financial system, and when they do so, they are all protected. Either the players themselves or the consumers themselves, they are also protected. Ultimately, that we can contribute to the development of Namibia.
All right. Now, Namibia, if this is a topic of interest to you, please join us on our social media. We are live on our Facebook page at Ministry of Information and Communications Technology. Alternatively, you can watch us live on our YouTube channel, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. Add your voice to this conversation and be part and parcel of this conversation, and ask your questions right away and get your answers from the Chief Executive Officer in the studio with me. So, Mr. Matomola, I'd like to know, what is the mission? We spoke about the vision of Namfisa. What is the mission of Namfisa?
The vision of Namfisa, or the mission of Namfisa, is codified in the law, and from there we have crafted our mission, which is to regulate and supervise financial institutions, financial intermediaries, to foster stable, fair, non-banking financial sector, to promote consumer protection, and to provide sound advice to the Minister of Finance. So we want to make sure that our advices to the Minister is well researched and it's sound, and that whosoever plays in the system must be supervised and regulated fairly, and ultimately that there's stability in the system.
All right, duly noted. Now, Mr. Matomola, what are some of, or what are the financial institutions that falls under the supervision of Namfisa?
Namfisa is quite an important entity or public enterprise because it looks after a wide range of financial entities. We look after the long and short-term insurance companies and insurance brokers and agents that place in the insurance industry, the asset management, the unit trusts, some might call them collective investment schemes, the pension funds, the medical aid funds, the exchanges, and the brokers that also participate in the exchange, the friendly societies, money lenders, and micro lenders. Also, the current act mandates us also to look after the public accountants and auditors. So those are the entities that are in the purview of the regulatory ambit of Namfisa.
Okay. Now, one may be wondering what the current legislation that Namfisa oversees is. Can you talk to us briefly about that?
Yeah, no, we have, as the authority, administer a wide range of pieces of legislation. At the moment, we're looking at Financial Institution Act of 1984. We have the Financial Intelligence Act of 2012, the Friendly Societies Act of 1956 is quite old, the Inspection of Financial Institutions Act of 1984, the Long-Term Insurance Act. We have also an establishing act, which is the Namfisa Namibia Financial Institutions Supervisory Authority Act of 2021. Not 2021, that's the new one, still having the old one of 2001. The Medical Aid Funds Act of 95, Pension Funds Act of 1956, Short-Term Insurance Act of 1998, Stock Exchange Control Act of 1985, Unit Trust Control Act of 1981, and the Usury Act of 1968. And also, of recent, we have the Microlending Act of 2018, which is one of the latest acts that we administer. So it's quite a huge range. If you look at this act and the financial institutions that are affected, this constitutes about just slightly below 400 billion assets, which makes about 70% of the total assets in the financial sector. It's quite a very huge responsibility that is bestowed upon Namfisa.
Indeed, that sounds like a daunting task. But you seems to be doing well. But of course, you cannot be carrying out such a huge responsibility without encountering, challenges. Talk to us about the regulatory and supervisory challenges that Namfisa has faced or is facing.
Yeah, like any other institution, you are faced with some challenges, and these challenges require some solutions to it. And the challenges that we face in our space, one is archaic legislative frameworks. And when you look at these old legislative framework, stifle innovation, and in some cases, they are very difficult to implement because they have been overtaken by events. The other thing that the current laws, given that they are very old, they are more compliance-driven, and therefore the world has moved on. Long ago, they have moved to what we call risk-based supervision. And when you look at these old laws, they'll require you to tick boxes, but is that sufficient? Not really. We need to look at the risks because that is what matters other than ticking boxes. And when you tick boxes, it means you are looking at issues which have already happened, but risk-based supervision looks into the future and see what you anticipate and how you can monitor that and mitigate the risks. And also the old laws have inadequate supervisory and enforcement powers. And sometimes the public might even say, what is Namfisa doing? Because you cannot issue a penalty that is equivalent to a $10. The institution will just look at you and say, this guy is not serious. So, and they might even say, let's pay the $10 so that we continue to do what we do by floating the laws. So those are the bigger challenges that we have. And some challenges, we find that the setup of Namfisa is such a way that we have the board, which is an administrative board, and we have an institution that is called the registrar, who looks after supervision of these entities. So these two have two different vantage points on how they look at things. The board looks at the resources that is available, and the registrar would want to ensure that supervision is done. And therefore, the availability of resources becomes a challenge because the two are not aligned, and are held responsible on different things, and therefore there will be that tension between the registrar and the board. The laws are also fragmented, sometimes inconsistent, and in the end, they exacerbate the costs. If I give you an example, in terms of some of these old laws, if a person is aggrieved by the decision of the registrar, some other law says they can go to the minister, the other law says go to the appeal board. And these are two forums which have the mandates that are more or less looking at each other. And therefore, we need to make sure that we are aligned, that we have only one forum which can deal with these type of things. Because of this fragmentation and inconsistency, you might find yourself being protracted in legal battles that could be solved very quickly. And another very important thing that is for the consumers, currently the laws that we have is not so adequate in terms of consumer protection, where the consumers need to get recourse when they are aggrieved. And this is important for them, for the consumers to find swift and speedy resolution of their complaints. So these are bigger challenges, and these challenges also has been identified by stakeholders like the Namibian Parliament, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and they have advised and say, please, can you reform your legislative instrument to be on par with what the world is doing? So those are mostly one of my headaches that it keeps me awake, how to reconcile some of these things to be effective in terms of delivering on the mandate.
All right. Now, as an institution that is encountering some of the aforementioned challenges that you just mentioned, what are the mitigating factors that you have in place to, of course, address the shortcomings that you just alluded to?
Yeah, what we have done at the authority, when we are faced with these challenges, we embarked on what we call a three-pronged reform, and that was part of our strategy. And this three-pronged reform relates to the legislation, relates to the supervisory framework, and also how do we configure the institution. So we have gone through the reconfiguration of the institution, where we have relooked at the organization and say how best can we deliver on our mandate. And we have gone through the legislative reform, and through this legislative reform, there are a number of pieces of legislation that has been passed by Parliament. I've talked about that there is a legislation on the micro-lending, where we address some issues in the micro-lending sector. We came up with the new Namfisa Act of 2021, although it's not yet in force. And we also came up with a legislation called, it's a common one, FIMA, and the Financial Institution and Markets Act, which is also still to be implemented. And we're also looking at another bill, which is still not finalized, although it went through Parliament, and it was put on hold, that it is the Financial Services Adjudicator, which will look at the issues relating to consumer protection in the financial sector. We also have another bill that is still in making, that is the Consumer Credit Bill, where we have gone through some public consultation. Once those consultations are done, then we'll be able to provide that bill to the minister for his consideration before it can hit the floor of Parliament for its consideration. So those are the reforms that we have done. And through FIMA as well, we came up with the issues relating to risk-based approach, which we have finalized, and this has been provided to the industry, and we have started implementing it. But for us to implement it successfully, we need the backing of the law, and that law refers to the Financial Institution and Markets Act, the famous FIMA. So you can see so much work has happened over the past few years, and a lot still need to be done to make sure that these challenges and shortcomings are addressed.
Now, Namibia, I am still urging you to be part of this very important conversation. Please follow us on our social media platforms. And on Facebook, we are at Ministry of Information and Communications Technology. You can alternatively also stream us live on our YouTube channel, and our handle there is MICT Namibia. Alternatively, you can actually post your questions on all our social media platforms, and I will post it to the CEO in the studio with me. Now, Mr. Matomola, I would like to know, pardon me, what are the principles and scopes of financial institutions and Market Act number 2 of 2021 FIMA?
FIMA is quite a very good piece of legislation because it harmonizes and consolidates the laws that regulate the non-banking financial institutions, financial intermediaries, and the financial markets. And when you look at this, I have told you in the beginning that we have so many pieces of legislation that has been passed at different times, and they are not consistent, but FIMA makes them so consistent. So FIMA takes the approach where we are trying to supervise and regulate all the non-banking sector by using prudential supervision and market conduct issues, including the governance of regulated institutions. Like as an old saying goes, that the fish rots from the head. So if governance is not robust, then institutions are bound not to do well. And therefore, FIMA strengthened that particular item of governance. And if you look at what are the many principles or provisions that are included in FIMA, one is the issue where we look at the composition of the board and the duties of the board of these regulated entities. That the board should be fit and proper. Not everybody else can participate, but only those who are fit and proper and are able to do the job that is required by them in terms of the law. And also that the boards should have at least 1/3 being independent so that we can deal with issues of conflict of interest. And also the principal officers, in most cases, currently now, they are not part of the board. The law will require them that they become part of the board, that they can also be held accountable together with the board. And the board is also charged with the issues relating to risk management together with senior management. And also they need to comply with the code of conduct, act prudently, honestly, in good faith, and all the time to avoid conflict of interest. Issues of duty of care is also provided for in FIMA. And in some cases where we find that somebody is no longer fit and proper and he is the member of the board, Namfisa can direct that that person should be replaced with a competent person, a person that is fit and proper. And when we look at FIMA, I must state here that FIMA goes beyond what is in the public domain. And FIMA looks after insurance, financial markets, collective investment schemes, retirement funds, which is the pension funds, friendly societies, medical aid funds, funds and society administrators, property in trust, and all other general provisions. So there are very good provisions in FIMA, which, for example, if I take one of the examples, is that some contracts that we have currently are written in the language that is quite difficult to understand because they are legal languages. FIMA requires that this should be in plain language, and also the font type should also be bigger so that people can know what they are signing for. And there should be some disclosure that is the two parties should know, because most cases there is information asymmetry. So FIMA tries to take away those type of things. So we at the authority, we are excited that if FEMA comes into play, we'll be able to deal with the issues that we are concerned about, especially issues relating to the protection of the financial system, that it becomes stable and that people can have confidence in the financial system and they can be fully protected when they transact in the financial sector.
All right. Now, from your response, I've deduced that Namfisa is striving very hard to be inclusive. Is there perhaps any means of translating the FEMA Act into the local languages, the vernaculars, for those that don't understand English? Is there any provision made?
I think that is a very good question, and also it's also one of the things that at the authority, what we want to look at once FEMA comes into force, that we are able to make sure that people understand it, that we simplify it, making sure that it is written in the language that is understood, and where resources is available, then we will translate the laws that we are able to administer into indigenous languages so that people can fully understand and fully participate in the financial system.
Very well noted. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's excited for that one. All right, now we surely but slowly coming to the end of the discussion today. Mr. Matomola, maybe you can quickly talk to us on the way forward for the FEMA and Namfisa Act.
The authority, as the implementing agent of government, waits for the pronouncement by the minister responsible for finance, when the minister will decide when to bring FEMA into force. For my knowledge that I have been informed is that FEMA will only come into place once the committee with the minister is appointed to look at one legislation that looks at the preservation of pension benefit has been consulted broadly with all the Namibian public, and the recommendation is made to the minister in terms of that piece of legislation, because the minister needs to issue that legislation. He might decide not to issue it, or he may decide to issue it. And once the minister is done with that, he will advise in the government gazette and say FEMA and Namfisa Act can come into force. So we are eagerly waiting for that, and very soon the minister will make his own pronouncement, because I know that the task team is busy at work and it has given the minister the first report, and we are waiting to give the minister the final report, and then the minister will make his determination when FEMA will come into play. And the other pieces of legislation that we are building with the consumer credit, that continues, and we anticipate to provide the minister with the bill during the course of this financial year that will end in March next year. So by December, we might be able to provide the minister with the consumer credit bill, which he will take through all the governance structures of government for it to hit the floor of Parliament. And those are the exciting projects that we look forward, and that is everything is ready from our end. The subordinate legislation that accompanies FEMA has been consulted upon, only few that require some few tweaking. And as for us, we are ready for implementation. We wait for the minister to give us a go-ahead.
All right, and now, Mr. Matomola, additional to your response to that question, the previous question, is there any updates from Namfisa to its stakeholders or the general public?
Yeah, from Namfisa, it's always important to update the public that the non-banking financial institutions remains financially sound and stable, despite the fact of the the externalities that hit Namibia, like the COVID-19, the slowdown in the economy. The financial institution remained sound and stable, and they do not pose any risk to the financial system. And the authority will continue to deliver diligently on its mandate. And also to let the public that Namfisa takes its job seriously, given the fact that we regulate over 70% of the financial sector's assets. That is quite a big responsibility, because if anything happens to these assets that are close to 400 billion, that can lead this country into a very bad shape, and instability and some social ills can also creep in. Therefore, we remain committed to work with stakeholders. We remain committed to ensure that the objectives of transformation of the financial sector is realized, consumers are protected, industries have the leveled playing field, and at the end of it all, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need Namibia that is developed, Namibia where everybody can find themselves something to do, everybody can be included in the mainstream of the financial sector. And if the public would want to follow Namfisa, what Namfisa is doing, we have our own website, which is www.namfisa.com.na, or on social media platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Instagram. There you are able to follow us, where if you need to pose questions for us, whatever you need us to expand on, you are welcome to get in contact with us. And also, where if the users of financial services are aggrieved, doors are open. We have a complaints department where you can lay your complaints, and Namfisa can take up these complaints to ensure that they are addressed amicably for the benefit of the consumers as well as the industry at large, that there's confidence in the system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matomola, for making time to grace us with your presence at the GIC this morning, and for allowing us to drink from your fountain of wisdom as the CEO of Namfisa. And Namibia, that is all the time we had for today's discussion. Join us again next time when we bring you another fruitful discussion, here at the GIC. From myself, Hilani Philippa Samunyela, and the entire GIC crew. Until next time, goodbye.